For our next session, Building Solid Foundations for Change, Studios, Facilities, and Broadcasters. Today's panelists include Ruthie Calarco, Senior Director of Operations, CBC Studios, David Wahlgren, Co-President and Partner, Wiseacre Rentals, Ashley Pierrepont, oh, sorry about that, I'll try that again. VP Commercial, Pinewood Group, and Moderator, Marguerite Pigott, Film Commissioner and Director of Entertainment Industries, City of Toronto. But first, a few words from Barbara Williams, Executive Vice President, CBC.
So good morning. You know, before I touch on the actual focus of this panel discussion, I just have to take a minute to say how proud, and maybe in brackets, surprised I am of this industry as a whole coming together as we have today for today's forum. I think it's amazing. And I say that not only as a person who runs the CBC, but as someone who has been in this crazy, wonderful business for over 40 years. Like, let's face it, we haven't always come together like this on the many challenges we have faced. But we are. We are this time, finally, importantly, on this initiative. And to all the students that are here, and I think it's fantastic that you're here, you are seeing a little piece of history unfolding right in front of you, because this industry has met well at the bar lots of times, in my experience, but not so well on the challenges, but we're doing it on this one. So a big shout out to all of you that have showed up. It really will make a difference. And what a perfect little segue for me to do a little bit of shameless bragging about the difference that I think CBC Studios, the group here, and what we're doing is making a difference. And it's really what our session today is all about building that solid foundation for change with our studios, where the production actually happens. And led by our own Ruthie Calarco here, our team is truly walking the walk. Or the talk, that's the way that expression's supposed to go, right? So much so that they recently received the Albert Studio Sustainability Certification for our studios right up here on the 10th floor of this building, as well as for the kids' studio that's just around the corner there if you walk down that hall. We are so proud of that accomplishment of our studios, and honestly, in Montreal and in Toronto, our studios are the very first in Canada to receive this recognition. So for those of you that know me well, or even know me a little, the subject of climate change is something I feel rather passionate about, rather desperate about, to be honest. It keeps me up at night. The incomprehensible destruction that we have already inflicted on our planet, and what we are leaving behind for the generations to come, is so concerning and so sad. But what buoys me, what keeps me going, is what we can do collectively and individually to affect change, desperately needed change. So for all of you that are here today, irrespective of whether you're presenting or participating, you are leaning in just by being here, leaning in on a challenge of a global scale, and you are willing, therefore, to make a difference. And that gives me hope. But let's face it, it needs to be bigger, better, faster. But if not us, who? And if not now, when? Our elders said this morning so powerfully, if we all went away, our planet would be fine. In fact, our planet would be better. So what are we gonna do, really do, to make sure that our planet is better with us? Not only with the possibility that it will be without us. So keep leaning in today. Keep thinking, keep learning, keep talking, keep trying, keep doing. It can make a difference. We will make a difference. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Ruthie Calarco and the whole panel. Thanks very much.
All right, hello. I'm Marguerite Pigott, David Wahlgren, Ashley Pierrepont, Ruthie Calarco. Very excited to be here today. Happy to be sitting in front of all of these Humber students, and very grateful to the organizers of the Sustainable Production Forum and all of the groups that have brought us to this day. It's an important day where we're all gathering energy, ideas, expertise from one another. So I'm certainly excited to be here. Thanks, it's a privilege. Today we're going to be talking about, in this panel, we're really going to be talking, as Barb mentioned, focused on the facilities. You know, when a production has a home base, what's going on at that home base? And there are so many different perspectives from which to undertake the challenges related to sustainability. Producers do it every day. The unions and guilds are certainly doing it. Schools are doing it. This is a unique and distinct focus on this panel, so we certainly don't mean to be unaware of any of those other efforts. We're just going to really focus on this. So I will start with Ruthie. Can you tell us a little bit, Ruthie, about CBC's sustainability policy broadly, and more specifically, you know, as you manage the operations of CBC Studios, how that policy is hitting CBC Studios in terms of the actions you're taking, and very importantly, what you're learning from those actions and how you're applying or amortizing what you're learning.
All right, it's a very big question. I'll start with greening our story, which is a strategy you have. You'll actually see over there. There's a QR code. You can link on it if you're interested in learning more of the specifics for the CBC strategy. It involves 4 pillars, which really, those 4 pillars, they speak to every part of our business. They are embedded in the things in our decision-making and the work that we do every day. And the one pillar that obviously means the most to me on the operations for television, digital, and radio side is really producing sustainably. This work that we've been doing is not new. It began many years ago in 2012, actually, when we decided to make the transition to LED lighting technology in Toronto, Montreal, and actually in Ottawa and Yellowknife for English services, where we made our decisions was really about impact. Where would we have the greatest impact? Where would we quickly reduce or see notable reductions in our carbon emissions? And where we'd actually have a return on the investment, because that's the business piece that is also pretty critical. When you look at our strategy more broadly, we'll speak more about probably the LEDs and things happening in studio a little later, but the other things it pertains to is the content that you see on CBC Television and Radio Canada, the storytelling that we're engaged in, but also that we're going to buy rechargeable batteries for all of our microphones so we don't keep throwing thousands of batteries a year into landfill. We also are talking to producers, whether they're in-house or independent, about the materials that they build their sets with and the chemicals that they, for fire safety or other motivations, put on their sets. What are the best things to do in order to recycle those sets again and give them another life? Does that sort of give you it's a very, very broad approach to our work. And the one thing I will say is it's really about measuring. It's about collecting data. It's about the really unsexy stuff of having to note take and identify areas of problems and where we want to improve. And for us, as Lisa Clarkson mentioned earlier, in many ways it started with Albert.
So I'd love to get a little bit more unsexy with you then.
Right on.
And dive into the Albert piece. So you got your certification, congratulations. Let's talk a little bit more about, like, Albert would apply slightly differently in different scenarios. And I know Pinewood has a different approach, and I'm looking forward to discussing that, but I do want to kind of set a baseline. Can you talk a little bit about what, for you, are the dominant characteristics of Albert, and how has that manifested in the bigger ways in terms of how you're running CBC Studios? Like, what are the big pieces of Albert that have affected how you work?
So there's two actual separate tools that Albert provides. One is the carbon calculator, and I think there's an opportunity for a workshop later today on the calculator itself, which is really at the production level, on set, actually in the business management section where you're working to determine the travel associated to your production. You know, travel is one of the most substantial impacts for climate, but all of the details related to a show. The other piece is the studio certification, which is the first of its kind actually presented globally, and it is, Albert put together a studio standard which allows studios to really look at infrastructure, to look at recycling on site, to look at water usage, to look at power consumption, whether it is grid power or if you're having to rely on diesel generators. It is really the details around the infrastructure piece. It's not really at the production level. So there's those two activities happening at the same time.
And the fact that it's not at production level is such an interesting piece, because I think that's the very heart of what we're trying to get at on this panel, because certainly the talk about production is going to come. So I think that's really interesting. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the Albert standards is that it also includes the mental health and well-being of the crew.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like 10 out of 10 for that. I think that's amazing. Ashley, I'd love to bring you into the conversation and talk about this a little bit more and from different perspectives. I mean, CBC is such an interesting anomaly in Canada, because the things that shoot here are generally the things that are commissioned by this organization. This organization has certain sustainability standards. You're in charge of the studio, so the stuff that shoots in-house, that is layers upon layers of control, intention, strategy, acted out with not just a production budget in mind, but a corporate budget in mind. And presumably that includes a carbon budget. With Pinewood, of course, it's going to be very different. You know, CBC is a home to Pinewood's hotel. So can we talk a little bit about, can I ask you a poorly constructed question, Ashley?
Absolutely.
That's going to allow you to say whatever you actually want.
Thank you.
Can you talk to us about Pinewood's approach?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, as you said, the hotel to home is 100% the right way to put it. We rent space to productions, and then what they do within that space is kind of up to them. So what we do is we think about things kind of from two different perspectives, one being from a building perspective and what we can do when we're bringing new buildings online, what we can be doing to our existing buildings to make them more eco-friendly, that being things like our new builds all have green roof, cool roof, bird-friendly glass, LED lighting that's all motion censored throughout, things like that. And then the other portion of it is working with productions and getting their feedback on things that they want to see, need to see, and that goes for things like we originally installed water bottle filling stations throughout our original site, working with productions to do that. And then going forward, that's something we do in all of our buildings going forward. And things like we hear the struggle about electric vehicles and wanting to have electric vehicles in fleets, and how do we accomplish that So we recently brought online 18 EV stations. So those are all things that we do while working with production to hear what's really kind of happening and what you guys, your boots on the ground people, want to see, need to see, and kind of having those conversations.
And there are places where the studio infrastructure and the production, of course, you know, the Venn diagram of those two things related to sustainability overlaps. How do you see that playing out with regard to either waste sorting and diversion, or avoiding food waste?
Yeah, I mean, I think production is taking so many strides right now to handle those things and to handle how generally in the past wasteful this industry has been. So I definitely think those are the sorts of things that are the somewhat easier next steps. It's definitely something we discuss with our productions of how we can support that. As you know, it's also just hard because it changes production of production, but I think that the bringing in of sustainability coordinators, like so many of you, it's awesome.
Yep.
That can help kind of drive and feed and give us suggestions and tell us about programs that we didn't know existed. I had the chance to spend some time with a bunch of you on Friday, and it was really, really interesting from my perspective to hear such an international perspective of like, hey, I'm from this country and we have this program, and that's not something I've ever heard of, but it's exciting to hear how that can go across the board.
Can I just jump in here? I want to build on something that you said around talking to production. So obviously coming from the vendor side of the equation, we try to step in when we can with the sustainability lens, whether it's at the beginning of production or in this case, right at the end of production. Quite often will we know who's coming in after this production that's leaving, and that's an opportunity for us to come in and facilitate that transition. Part of our mindset is obviously that last production's trash. With a little love could become the next production's treasure. So, you know, that's where we come in, and we're trying to do what we can to eliminate this straight to landfill, only to then see it come in the very next week on another trailer.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to keep everybody in the loop, I think maybe not everybody is aware of your business and what you do. Can you explain that to everybody so they can fully understand?
Absolutely. So we are obviously we're a for-profit organization. We're a full-service rental house in Toronto. We rent props, set decorations, greenery, backdrops, costume, small hand props, pretty much anything that you can need if you walk into a empty studio, to if you walk into on location somewhere but you're missing some key factors, etc. That's where we can come in and help productions kind of bring that scene to life.
So that's terrific. And you know, I've certainly, I completely got a kick out of going through your website and looking at the categories of things that they hold on to. Anything from, you know, broad kind of things that anybody is going to need, right through to like Victorian hats and Roman armaments and things like that. It's kind of a great curiosity shop in there. And it begins to get at circularity, as you said, and that's something that's obviously a very significant priority for many of us right now, certainly including the City of Toronto. So when you look at that, one of the things that we talk about when it comes to set storage, circularity, these kinds of things, is the challenge in the business model. And I want to talk about that, but before we do, I actually want to go a step back. Because, you know, we've talked about how you have to have a budget for sustainability, and that's true, and that budget needs to include time and staff time and time to wrap a set in a way that allows for that storage step to take place, which it very often doesn't. I want to go back to Ruthie and Ashley from the studio side to talk about the cost piece, how you find it saving you money, how you find it costing you money, and then come to you, David, because there's a lot of talking to be done on the business model itself. So Ruthie, can I start with you? How has, in your estimation, your experience, how has sustainability hit the budget in terms of either saving money, costing money, and how does CBC relate to that, understanding you're in a pretty unique circumstance?
Yeah. I can't speak specifically to like the specific in-house or independent production budgets, but what I can tell you is from the responsibility of a studio and our offer to our productions, that is where we see a prioritizing of an investment. We're looking to green our fleet, and we have very designated or definitive targets surrounding moving towards a greener hybrid or fuel-efficient vehicles that are required for all of our shows. We also see, investment towards providing better infrastructure surrounding recycling and composting, which we have here in the building, and ensuring that we're providing the tools to the productions that are coming in order for them to make good decisions while on site. And whether you're an in-house show or you're an independent production, those decisions, I view our role as studios as we are here to enable those decisions. They still reside with production, but I believe as a studio, one of the most important things, our greatest value, is providing that knowledge, providing the education, providing a technical staff that understands stewardship. We've spent a lot of time training our employees, and all of our employees have access to environmental or sustainable training courses to better allow them to perform on set. So I can't necessarily speak to the production budget. I can also say there are decisions you make at the capital level about a building's infrastructure and where you're going to focus your decision making, and those things are very critical, particularly as money and budgets are very, very tight. We are making tough decisions every day.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because that's actually the driver for the question, is that we're hearing across the board, whether the production is domestic or international, do more with less, do more with less. But at the same time, we need to be making these structural enhancements to how we work. So Ashley, how is it working for you at Pinewood? And I don't know to what extent, I'll just open up this door, walk through it however you like. Pinewood is obviously a global company. Mm-hmm. So I do want to talk about the cost piece and how that's hitting for you. And then we can move on to the global piece, because I want to understand global lessons as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that for us, again, we're kind of taking the lead from production, what production wants, and then I think we're very lucky that we have a lot of government programs that assist with structural upgrades and infrastructure upgrades that we definitely use when it comes to rebates for different programs. That's always extremely helpful, because as we all know, green things are amazing, but they tend to be expensive. So kind of playing that battle back and forth between what new things we take on, what general infrastructure updates, repairs, and things need to happen is always kind of the battle you're going to be playing, which is why I greatly appreciate that whenever we're doing new builds and new construction, we're always kind of taking that stuff on at the beginning and making it kind of standards as much as we can with buildings.
That's terrific. And so just kind of staying with the how do business and sustainability interact here? Can you talk, you said Wiseacre Rentals is for profit. One of the things that we hear a lot and that many of us are thinking about is like, what is the business model for set storage, for lockups, for circularity? Because in order for something to be sustainable, it's many dimensions, right? One of those is financial. How's that working for you?
I'll let you know. It's a work in progress, to say the least. No, it's 100%. I mean, we make no qualms about the fact that we are for-profit business. However, we're a for-profit business that stemmed from the realization that it's a turnover industry, that we can do better. So that was the impetus of how the company started, was how can we keep some of these assets in the industry available for future productions to take advantage of, and also very early on eliminate landfill, eliminate as much as possible going to landfill. So kind of if I can build on the comment I made earlier about when we come in towards the end of production A, they're wrapped and they're done. We come in with a mindset of obviously we acquire inventory and things and stuff. And the objective there is, what can we rent again? What can we take, modify, alter, and make use of again and bring it right into inventory? Another stream that we have and that we utilize is selling. There are certain items, not that many, but there are certain collector items that are very, very unique to a certain show that you can't rent again. Everybody knows where that was from, and it's not going to be used again. So there is a small avenue. Sometimes we help productions sell them to collectors and or to the end public. We also have a extremely well organized and refined system with charities across GTA. Whether there are homeless shelters or Diabetes Canada is a partner of ours, where we collect and we go through all the things that come off of a set that may not have value, and I say this back to your business question, enough for me to store and then rent because it's a low-end item, but it still could be brand new in box because it was bought in multiples for the show. So we donate that back to the community. Much rather do that than sending it to landfill. So that's kind of how we look at it from a business perspective. Tying back to the million-dollar question is how can we get sustainability lockups up and running? The biggest challenge is cost of land. No secret there. We all know the pressure on real estate and industrial rates going the way they're going. Couple that with location. Obviously, we're hearing from our production partners that in order to be of use to them, we need to be where they want to be. We need to be near the studios. We need to be where it's easy to facilitate this transition to the next show. So that's kind of the balance. And then the last thing, when you're talking about set decorations and big flats, taking them down, it's big, it's bulky, it takes up space. So we're making headway. We're learning from New York. We're learning from Vancouver. We're learning from the Ontario Film Board that we're in talks with to figure out how do we strike that balance between finding the land, finding the facility to do it, and then enable and facilitate that transition to the next production. And I do want to mention that part of our business is less for profit. It's more around our other main goal is to eliminate landfill. So we're of a different lens when we're looking at those opportunities.
And I think that opens it up to one of the key challenges is that people think, I among them, who wouldn't think it would be a great thing if on a studio campus, any studio campus, there was also a big fat lockup. That would be amazing. But how many productions per year would not happen because that land, that space is dedicated to a lockup? That's how many jobs wouldn't happen, how much investment wouldn't happen. So it's really, it is a very, very challenging trade-off. In the circularity piece, certainly the cost of land absolutely is issue number one. But have you been able to find any grants or support from other levels of government, as Ashley has alluded to, for the kind of work you're trying to do, diverting things from landfill?
Transparently, I'm relatively new, a couple of years into the film and TV industry, so not yet, but I'm saying not yet. We're hopeful, we're having the right conversations, and they're also industry partners, so other for-profit organizations that see the same goal, the same need, and collectively we can get together and find whether it's the real estate or the land that's required. So it's a combination of government funding, if you will, but ultimately for it to be sustainable, and I mean sustainable as in business sustainable, there needs to be a vested interest from the industry, from partners in the industry to keep this thing going. And we're hopeful, we're making inroads.
So can you tell me a little bit about when you say you need partnership from partners in the industry? I mean, the fact that so many people from so many different sectors are in this room is enormously encouraging. The fact that we're hearing about so many different groups working on these issues is enormously encouraging. I think what we're seeing above all is a willingness to partner. So when you say you're looking for that kind of partnership, what do you want to see? What would enable your model to grow and to scale, do you think?
that's the nut we're trying to crack, right? It's how do we come together as partners or ambassadors of this initiative? And while I'm saying we're making progress, we aren't there. And one of the main reasons why we aren't there yet is who operates it, who runs it, who brings what to the table, and who benefits to what degree. It's in my ideal world, you get the productions involved, but the productions are often short-lived. They live for 5-6 months. Successful shows, well, they come in new production and a new production team. So there's all these still challenges that we're trying to overcome, but we're hopeful.
Okay. So I want to go back to the global piece now, Ashley, if I can. What are you learning from Pinewood globally? What are some international best practices that have impressed you that you would want to see applied here? And one other thing, sorry, this is a two-part question. It's not even two, this is two completely unrelated questions.
Oh, no.
But I'm just gonna, I also know that Pinewood doesn't, okay, let me start with this one.
Okay. This is awesome. I love it so much.
Stay with me, I'll get there. I know that Pinewood doesn't adhere purely to Albert.
Right.
And the MPA uses pear and peach. There are different standards.
Yeah.
So let's talk, because this gets to the global question, right?
Okay.
Because that's the MPA's US and all of that, Albert's UK. Let's talk a little bit about how that works in terms of Pinewood's approach as a global company trying to deal with these different frameworks and what you've learned from that. See, it was one question after all.
Yeah, so obviously I'm not necessarily involved with the global sustainability effort of Pinewood Group, but I know we have just an amazing sustainability team in the UK that works with the 2 UK studios and then works with us as well. And they're greatly involved in all of this. There's been a number of givebacks that we've done with our Shepparton studio specifically. There's a £1 million investment in the River Ash corridor, which is right next to the studio and the town of Shepparton, to give back to biodiversity and that sort of stuff in that public park area. I think it's just being involved, listening to what productions want, and doing what we can do to make sure our infrastructure is as green as possible where possible.
Thank you. So I'm going to, fair warning, I'm turning it over to questions from the audience. We need to end before 12:30. So I will turn it over to questions from the audience after I ask this question. I always do that so you have a little bit of time to think. So last question, in your view, what are the gaps? What is the thing you most want to do next? What is your next goal, or what do you see as an opportunity to really move the needle from where you sit in the industry? That question's for all three of you.
I can start. And this comes from a different perspective, more as a broadcaster. I am interested in the carbon footprint that we need to look at for AI and storing data surrounding streaming and the multitude of files which have been replicated thousands of times for social media and the storage capacity that this takes. That is where my brain is going next.
That's great, thank you.
I think for me, most of it right now is around waste diversion and how we can, as a studio, potentially play a part in that. It was really interesting on Friday, again, spending some time with you guys and learning about some different waste diversion programs, either that Toronto currently offers or that internationally are offered, and seeing whether those are things we can look into here.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that one, the diversion, to right from the beginning when productions roll in. It hurts us to see the first thing that rolls in is a waste bin. And that's the reality of the industry that we're in, but that's what I'd like to see changed, not to have the waste bin move in first.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the audience? Yes.
One second, there's a mic coming.
This gentleman in the front.
Who's going? Yeah. Oh, you got to tell me where the mic's going. So you talked about budgeting. What would you
say budgeting most important if you're trying to limit your budget with the producer?
Okay, so I think what you're talking about right now is actually the production budget, right? Am I right?
Like the sustainability budget.
Okay, so the sustainability budget, generally speaking, unless you're running a studio, generally speaking, the sustainability budget would be in the production budget. There's no better person for you to learn from than Marianne Waterhouse, who's going to be on this stage later today about the production budget. But in terms of sustainability, I would say one thing that I certainly see is productions, when they are wrapping out, sometimes we'll get calls in the film office saying, we have this stuff, can you help us get rid of it? You have 4 hours. You know, budgeting that time for something to wrap would be a really good way to go. Thinking about how you order your food, how the food is presented, how the catering is done, making sure you're not using single-use plastics, all of that. I mean, there's so much more. Do you have any thoughts you want to add on production budgets? Because
Yeah, no, I think that that's all great stuff. I mean, so much of it isn't just about budget, it's just getting buy-in from your crew and from your producers. And I think it's getting there. But the more kind of involved and passionate you can be, and organize as much as possible and bringing that stuff up, as somebody said it earlier, it's from the beginning, getting it in pre-production meetings and having it be kind of ingrained from the very beginning, I think is ultimately.
And getting a sustainability coordinator in your budget, in your budget, so they'll be on your set and on the ground.
Yeah.
And sorry, I can't help but jump in here from a business standpoint. If you do it right, if you do it in the pre-production meeting, it doesn't have to cost more. Right. It sometimes costs more when it comes as an afterthought and go, oh, we have to worry about. But if it's in there right from the beginning, it does not have to cost more.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. So my question is, as we know, like films will come here and shoot from the U.S. So how do we make sure that they're following the same policies when they do shoot in the studios and facilities? And we do know as well that they do get a cut when they're shooting here. So how does that now affect their budget when including sustainability and wanting to continue to do business?
Can you repeat there was something I didn't hear in the last part of your question about how they get a cut or something?
Yeah, like how when people, like when in the US, like when they come and shoot here, it's like at a discounted cost. So I'm saying in the case that now we have sustainability coordinator that adds into the budget, how do we not deter business in that case?
Right, appreciate that question. So many of our clients are members of the Motion Picture Association. And so they're major studios. Those major studios all have their own approach to sustainable production, just like, you know, some have Albert and certainly Ontario Green Screen, and their carbon calculator training is intended to hit multiple different frameworks. So they have their own frameworks. They're called Peach and Pear, and you can learn more about them online. Some may be using, you know, something kind of self-crafted. So they're hitting their own marks in their own way. And the other thing is that the unions and guilds here in Toronto and across the country are also doing a lot of work training their members to have these habits, to be accultured to sorting waste, you know, or whatever it is. And when you talk about the cut, you're talking about tax credits, and using tax credits to construct incentives so that production is more sustainable is a conversation that's worth exploring. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question? Did you want to hear the answer from anyone else? Okay, good. Okay. Yes. This will be our last question.
Thanks. At the risk of blindsiding you, Ashley, I hope I don't, but I'd just like to hear from all of you. No, and maybe Ruthie can tell us a little bit about the way that the CBC building here is heated and cooled. And, okay. Well, I think you know what I'm talking about. But Ashley, being down in the Portlands, there is the Portlands, or the district energy system down there that involves using water from Lake Ontario to cool and to moderate the studio temperatures. Is Pinewood part of that? And perhaps, Ruthie, you could talk a little bit about that. And David, sorry, we've had these conversations many times about the types of buildings that the film industry typically will find themselves in. And some of them are very old and rickety and would take an incredible amount of money to retrofit. But I'd love to hear from the two of you about the use of cooling and heating and how that's factoring into studio systems when you take into consideration that the built environment accounts for about 40% of global emissions.
Yeah, so I mean, I unfortunately can't speak to that a ton. I don't know the answer. I know that it has been discussed, but I don't know where that lands as an actual answer to be able to give you. I can definitely take that away and get back to you, David.
What I can say, to my understanding, a portion of the broadcast center is cooled through a technology I can't speak to, but it is using Lake Ontario water. The majority of the building, to my understanding, though, is on the grid. It is Ontario Power, it's hydro, and it is how we report it in our calculations. That's about it, I would say.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity, and we're looking forward to the rest of the day. Thanks to the panel.
Thank you.